Good morning and welcome to our Beyond the Trash Can question and answer live engagement. My name is Nicole Hernandez Mars, and I'll be your educator slash host for the first part of our visit together. I'd like to kick off our talk by giving a shout out to some of our schools that are joining us today. We had Meadows Elementary, sixth grade class. Thank you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad you can join us today. And yeah, let's get started. If you all remember, Metro is a regional government here in the Portland area. We take care of a lot of things. We take care of a lot of the parks. We take care of the zoo, which is right over this hill. And we're also in charge of the trash recycling, which is one of the reasons why we're here today. Right now, I'm standing at Metro Central Transfer Station. This property is about 10 acres large, which is about 10 football fields. I'm going to pause for just a second for this. About 10 football fields large in property, and we're where the Willamette and the Columbia Rivers merge, which was also the home to many generations of tribal members such as the Tualas and Kalapuya, Clackamas, Chinook Band, Cathlamet, Molalla, and many, many more prior to the settlers coming in. So let's talk about this building behind me. This is our actual transfer station facility. I'm going to give you some really cool, actually what I kind of call like a little tidbit of information or a little secret, in that this building wasn't meant to be a transfer station. It was meant to be something else. It was meant to be a bowling alley. No, it was not meant to be a bowling alley. It was actually meant to be a steel mill for World War II. During World War II, they needed a lot more support for the war. They needed that steel and they have it manufactured. So they started building this building to help that. But the war ended before the building was complete. So it actually sat empty for about 40 or 50 years. And then we were able to refurbish it, redesign it, and make it into this transfer station that you see before you, which I think is a really good example of some of the work that we have been able to do in order to repurpose old materials and old buildings and get the most use out of them. So this building is over 80 years old. So that's awesome that we're still today able to use it. I want to talk a little bit about what's happening over my shoulder. So right here is our Bay 1, and this is our Self Hall area. Self Hall is where individuals maybe they did a lot of cleaning out of their homes or maybe in their garages and have these large items that they really can't put in their curbside or dumpsters. So they bring them here for a small fee and they're able to drop it off. And then let's pivot over here to the other side and we have our other bay. We have Bay 2 and Bay 3. And that is where we drop the haulers, the individuals to pick up your trash at your curb or at your dumpster. And this is where they're dropping it off. You can actually see some folks dropping it off right at this moment. And you can see our trash is constantly moving this area. And I think it's important to note that it never did stop moving. During the pandemic, the trash kept moving. All of the workers, the transfer station workers, the truck drivers, the HHW techs, all came to work every day and were able to keep our trash moving and keep our community safe and clean, as well as our ecosystems during the pandemic. And I think we need next time you see a transfer station worker, give them a big shout out. They did a lot of great work for us in helping keep our communities healthy and clean. I'm going to pause there for a moment and see if there's any questions, because I just threw a lot of information at you.
So Nicole, someone here has posted in, does it smell there?
Does it smell? Good question. Guess what? Trash smells. It does. It smells. But you know what? I've been here a couple of times this week as well as last week, and I actually am not smelling anything right now. I smell nothing. And then in most days, you don't smell the smells that are here. If you get really close inside where it's all trapped and you're right next to the trash, yeah, it's going to be a little smelly. But that's okay. Okay. Well, let me share a couple other fun facts with you all. A lot of folks say, okay, Nicole, this seems like a lot of work. All this trash and moving and all the workers and coming and going and dumping. Why can't we just burn the trash? Or better yet, why can't we just put it in a rocket and send it into space? Well, there's a couple problems with that. So first of all, if we burn our trash, that releases a lot of harmful gases into the air, like sulfur oxide and carbon monoxide, and that can really be hazardous to us and our community. So we don't want to do that. If we put it in a rocket, well, a rocket costs about $90 million just to send one into space. And I don't I think that's a lot of money to send multiple rockets every day from multiple cities across this country into space. It's probably not the most responsible way of us managing our trash. So we encourage folks to reuse materials as best as possible, or to resist upgrades such as phones or PlayStations, or refuse materials such as, here, take this free straw. No thanks, I don't need that straw. By getting the most out of our materials and creates less trash for us, and that's very helpful to our planet, because guess what? It's Earth Month, right? That's why we're here. That's why we're talking about trash. That trash behind me used to be something else. They used to be materials. They also used to come from someplace. They come from the planet. They were gifts from the planet, and we call them natural resources. So next time you look at trash, maybe look at it a little differently. Maybe don't look at it as, oh, this is just trash. Maybe look at it as like, this is a natural resource, or this is a gift from the planet. Am I truly done with this item? Maybe I can get more use of it, or maybe I can donate it. So those are the things that we ask you to consider to help our planet out during the celebration of this month, during the celebration this month. Any other questions?
There's a question about why are there so many birds there?
Why are there so many birds? Good question. So there's a lot of trash, but there's also a lot of food here. And especially in our last bay, bay 4, we have our food scraps. For a lot of us in our cities, we're putting our food scraps or food leftovers in a separate bin, and it's being collected and it's being taken over there. Well, there's a lot of birds like seagulls and crows that we call, opportunists. They're going to try to get a free meal whenever they can. And I would do too if I was a bird. I'd try to get a free meal whenever I could also. So they like to hang out here, and they try to get little pieces of food to help feed them and maybe their offspring. But that can be problematic because some of this food, as well as like if they pull from like our trash areas or wet waste area, that can be really hazardous to them. That could really cause harm from them and maybe even poison them. And we certainly don't want that to happen. So that is why we have birds here. But we have a plan. We have a team of friends here who help us. And if you remember from the video, we have our falconry team that comes here periodically and basically just flies around to kind of scare off all the other birds. And they do a pretty good job because the birds started figuring out their routine, and then they had to stop coming on a routine because the birds would avoid the transfer station knowing that the birds were coming, or rather the raptors were coming. And so they knew what days to come and knew when they weren't going to be here. So that became a problem. So we had to change the schedule and make it all weird and different and erratic so that they don't know when they're coming.
Thanks, Nicole. Now let's head over to HHW, Household Hazardous Waste. This department is located at both of our transfer stations. We're going to start watching a little bit of a video about what actually goes on in that location. And then one of our technicians is going to give us more details.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sasha. I'm a hazardous waste technician here at Metro Central Haz Waste. You just watched some video footage of car driving up and us unloading the car and taking some household hazardous waste out of it. Our job here is to sort that. We took out things like paint, pesticides, oil, antifreeze, batteries, light bulbs, all kinds of things. So we have like 90 hazard classes to sort those things into safely. A lot of times we get items like the items that you see on this cart behind me. They're not labeled, they're not in an original jar, we don't know what they are. So we have to test them to get them into the proper hazard class. We don't have to know exactly what the material is, we just have to know where to safely dispose of it. So you saw me testing a couple of those materials. Largely what we get every day, probably about 80% I think of what we get is paint. And luckily we have here in Portland our Metro Paint facility where we bring the paint. They actually they sort it, they pour it, they reformulate it into new paint and sell the paint. So you can buy recycled paint right here in Portland Metro. PPE, or personal protective equipment, layers of protection. I wear every day some layers of some sort of protection. Today I have on an apron to protect me against splashes and Tyvek. But we have lots of different layering for the hazard class we're dealing with. We have a bulking room where we're going to consolidate fuels into drums. And we are completely head to foot covered, no skin showing. We're on an air hose, so we're not breathing the fumes in that room to safely put those things into the drums to ship them out to be used as fuel. We send them to, well, Stericycle sends them to Oklahoma to be used as fuel in a cement kiln.
I'm Sabrina Nelson, and I'm one of the hazardous waste techs at Metro Central Haz Waste. In our other suits, it's not so bad in the ones where we have supplied air on, because we can hit our air button and that'll cool us off a little bit, at least our face in our air masks. So, so those suits, and we're also inside, and we're inside the bulking room with those suits on. And the bulking room does have air conditioning, so we keep it a little cool in there so we don't get as hot. But again, they don't breathe, so all my sweat's still icky and sticky as when I get out of the that suit as well. Otherwise, sometimes it can be a little hard to walk in them, kind of like imagine you see the people walking on the moon with all their suits on, and you're kind of lose kind of your balance, or because we have so many layers on. So yeah, we just have to be careful not to trip on anything, because we really can't move very well in those suits, and we can't pick up a pen or pencil with all those layers on either on our gloves. So we're wearing those layers to protect our skin from getting burns, or maybe anything penetrating through into our skin, into our blood that could make us sick. So we have many, many layers that we put on to protect us from all the different types of chemicals, because chemicals react with different types of gloves differently based on what the glove is made out of. So that's why we have all those different layers. You'll also see that my colleague had an air hose on the back of him. And when he was inside, you saw he had an air mask on. And that mask protects us from the air that's inside that bulking room. Because as you saw him taking all the lids off of everything, that's all those chemicals are off-gassing, we call that, into the bulking room. And if we don't have that air mask on, we could breathe those chemicals. And a lot of those chemicals can cause cancer, or possibly even take all the oxygen out of our body in that moment, and we wouldn't have any oxygen to breathe. So we want to make sure we have an air supply on. And so that's another protection that we have on, and you saw my colleague have in the bulking room. And yeah, the goo, did you all see that goo in there? Yeah, really oily, gooey rags that he pulled out of that, that big, huge funnel. And so the rags we have to pull out, because we're not able to ship those to the person who takes that drum, because they can't use those rags in their machinery to power their machinery. So all those liquids are used as alternative fuels. And if you have rags in there, you can't pour that into a gas tank, right? Also, you saw the aerosols. We puncture those aerosols. As you saw, that can gets punctured and then squished into a little puck that we can recycle. And then the air that gets released out of that can, we call that a propellant. What gets released out goes into a air filter on the side of that machine. And there's little microbes in there that kind of eat and break up those, what we call propellants. And so everything there is recycled, from the can to the liquids inside of it to also the propellant they use for the spray. On the slide that we're looking at here, we have a bunch of different chemicals on it, and you'll be looking, saying, wait a minute, there's paint on here. How can that be toxic? Well, paint, latex paint, water-based paints are not toxic to us and then in the environment if we are disposing of it properly. So as long as we're putting it on our walls and following all the proper directions on the container, then it is not going to be toxic. But once we have a little liquid left in that container, and then we want to pour it down the drain, or we want to pour it in our trash can, or maybe outside, it's then toxic in the environment, and it can hurt our health. It hurts the health of the animals in the environment. Also, it gets mixed in what we call kind of that garbage juice, in our landfills. And so that garbage juice is what you see in your garbage cans. In the bottom of your garbage cans, it's kind of similar liquid that we see in our landfills. And we just don't want all these chemicals in our landfills, possibly then also getting discharged into waterways. And so that's why paint is not toxic as long as it's on our walls and it's being used properly. But then we also have to dispose of it properly, use it properly and dispose of it properly. So that's what we do with the paint. And as you heard Sasha mention, we recycle all of that paint. So again, it doesn't get put in the trash, and all those resources that we use to make that paint, or all those resources we want to preserve. And so we are going to recycle those again and use those resources again. Metro, actually, we have kind of entry positions where you can get some of that knowledge and working experience and don't need to have the degree, just the passion to want to do this work and keep the chemicals out of the environment and get them disposed of properly. And so that can help get you a little experience and then secure a more permanent job at Metro or maybe another employer. But I personally have a 4-year college degree in environmental hazardous waste. Basically, it's called environmental remediation and hazardous waste management. Because hazardous waste, there's different aspects of this field you can get into. As you saw in our video, you can be where people bring you the waste. It's called a transfer, storage, and disposal facility, which is what we are here at the hazardous waste facility. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us in this webinar. It was great getting to meet all of you guys and being able to explain the job that we do every day and how we protect the environment, and just the passion. It was great to share this passion with all of you, and I hope to see you and your parents come in to one of our facilities. Again, my name's Sabrina. You can always ask and say, hey, I saw you. Can I speak to Sabrina? I saw her on a webinar, and I'd be happy to meet you and talk with you. So with that, have a happy day.
I want to thank you all for attending our live session today. If you have any more questions, feel free to send it our way. We'll try to find the answers. Hope you have a wonderful day, and maybe we'll see you at the transfer station.